Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you've tuned in, you probably already know that the question, do you believe in aliens, is, well, kind of irrelevant, a bit lazy even.
It's absolutely the wrong place to start.
Right. So our mission today is a lot more complex. We are moving completely past that yes or no question to ask something much more important. What is the actual verifiable data?
And maybe more to the point, how has the whole national security apparatus managed that data? How have they concealed it? And let's be frank, sometimes outright lied about it for the better part of a century.
We have put together a really, I think, fascinating stack of source material for you. It details this intersection of physics-defying technology, deep-seated government secrecy. And
a human need for something sublime, for mystery. I mean, the story really is less about whether we have cosmic neighbors and so much more about the very real, very tangible political machine built to control what we know about the unknown.
Exactly. And what our sources make crystal clear right from the jump is that this is not some modern fad born out of social media algorithms. The mystery has always been embedded in military reality. Our story really begins not with flying saucers in the 1940s, but right in the middle of World War II. In the skies over Europe, we're talking about the Foo Fighters.
That's such a critical starting point. People often forget this. These were strange, glowing, sometimes metallic-looking orbs. Allied air crews over Europe and the Pacific kept reporting them.
And we need to be clear here, these aren't just civilian reports.
Oh, not at all. These were highly trained military personnel, often on incredibly dangerous night bombing runs, encountering things they absolutely could not explain, things that sometimes would even mimic their own flight maneuvers.
So from the very beginning, these were documented military encounters. They were immediately filed away as something operationally anomalous, something the enemy didn't build and that we couldn't identify. The mystery was a national security problem from day one.
That's it. That established the template for everything that followed. UAP, or UFOs as they were called then, are first and foremost an operational and an intelligence problem.
And just to make sure we're all on the same page, we are going to be using the modern official term that the Pentagon itself now uses, UAP.
Right, which now officially stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. The name change itself is part of the story.
Okay, let's dive into that story. Let's unpack the real foundation of this secrecy paradigm, starting in 1947. I mean, you can't deny that year is ground zero for the whole flying saucer archetype.
It really is. That one summer gives us two moments that basically shape the entire conversation for the next 75 years.
First up, the sighting by private pilot Kenneth Arnold, June 24th near Mount Rainier.
Arnold's real contribution was, funny enough, linguistic more than anything else. He saw 9 objects. They were moving at this unbelievable speed.
And he described their motion famously as being like a saucer would if you skipped it across water.
Exactly. He was describing the motion, not necessarily the shape, but the press, they just seized on the word saucer.
And immediately coined the phrase flying saucer.
And just like that, a global cultural icon was born. That description was just so sticky, so perfect, and ultimately so reductive. It boxed the phenomenon in from the very beginning.
Then, barely 2 weeks later, we get the big one. The incident that would define the government's response for decades. Roswell, New Mexico, July 1947.
A local rancher finds this field of strange debris. The Army Air Force Base there in Roswell puts out a press release, and what it says is stunning.
They say they have recovered a flying disc.
And that initial announcement, that's so critical. For a moment, it was official. It validated this sudden, intense public fascination. But then
came the retraction. And it was fast and decisive. General Roger Ramey shows up, holding pieces of what he claimed was just, their balloon.
A mundane weather balloon and its radar reflector,
Yeah.
He literally posed for photos with it.
That initial, yes, it's a disc, followed by the immediate, very public switch to, no, it's just a balloon. That's the moment public trust just dies, isn't it?
It is the single most important reversal in this entire history. Our sources are unanimous on this. It is the deliberate foundation of the entire secrecy paradigm.
Because we now know the weather balloon story was also a lie.
It was a cover story. It was hiding Project Mogul. And Mogul was a hugely sensitive, top-secret program. It involved these high-altitude balloon trains carrying microphones.
Designed to listen for Soviet nuclear tests.
Exactly. They were trying to monitor the atmosphere for evidence of the Soviets getting the bomb.
So the government told one lie, the weather balloon. to cover up a much deeper, much more critical national security secret.
That's it. The balloon story was convenient, it was easy for people to understand, and it masked something genuinely secret and important. But in telling that lie, that swift, dismissive retraction gave birth to the powerful conspiracy theory that is still with us today.
The government knows what happened, and it is lying.
That's the core belief. The secrecy paradigm wasn't just imposed out of nowhere. It was created by the government's own actions. They created a belief vacuum, and it has never, ever been filled.
And once that precedent was set, with the Cold War heating up, they couldn't just ignore the thousands of sightings that started pouring in.
No, they needed a system, a bureaucracy to manage it all. Because, every single anomaly in the sky could potentially be a new Soviet technology. Or it could be the start of genuine mass panic.
So they moved pretty quickly. They launched Project Psi-GN in 1947.
Right, and Psi-GN's initial conclusion was, astonishingly, that UAPs were real and probably interplanetary, a conclusion that was, you can guess, quickly buried by the higher-ups.
So that was followed by Project GRUGE in 49, and then the most famous one, the one everyone knows, Project Blue Book.
Blue Book, established in 1952, and it ran all the way until 1969.
And Blue Book is so fascinating because its whole structure reveals this dual intention from the government. It wasn't just about pure science, was it?
Not at all. It was a PR effort disguised as an investigation. Its mandate was explicitly twofold.
Okay, what were they?
1, scientifically investigate the reports. See if they represent a threat or maybe some kind of technological breakthrough. 2, publicly debunk as many sightings as possible to quell what they called mass hysteria.
Which, during the Cold War, was a very real fear for the government.
A huge fear. So Blue Book was designed from the start to operate under this tension. It had to collect potentially very unsettling data on the inside.
While telling the public on the outside that there was nothing to see here.
Exactly.
So did our sources suggest that the scientific part of that mandate was ever really taken seriously?
That's the big question. And the consensus in the source material is generally no, especially not as the program went on. Critics, including scientists who worked on the Condon report that eventually shut it down, they argue that the whole program was basically engineered to filter everything towards a mundane conclusion.
The ending was pre-written.
Pretty much. The political need to reassure the public was paramount. When the Condon report finally came out and said UFOs pose no security threat, well, that gave the Air Force the scientific cover it needed to shut Blue Book down and declare the problem solved.
Even inside that very controlled, debunking-focused machine, there's this one sticky data point that just refuses to go away. The raw numbers.
That's it. That's the key. Blue Book investigated 12,618 sightings between 1952 and 1969.
And of those,
701 of them remained officially classified as unidentified.
So even by their own metrics, after nearly 2 decades of trying to explain everything away, over 5.5% of cases just couldn't be resolved.
Couldn't be explained as conventional aircraft or balloons or stars or anything else.
And that persistent 5%, that's foundational, isn't it? It proves that some kind of physical phenomenon was happening over and over that defied the easy explanation. It meant that even the government's own official debunker had to leave the door just a little bit ajar.
It left the door ajar, and that was enough to keep the serious inquiry going just much deeper in the shadows.
So for decades, we have this entrenched secrecy. The official line is nothing to see here. But those 701 files are sitting there suggesting something else entirely. How did that dam finally start to crack?
Well, the initial cracks didn't come from the government suddenly deciding to be transparent. That's not how it worked.
It came from legal pressure.
It always comes from legal pressure. In the late 1980s, you had this group, the Citizens Against UFO Secrecy, or CAUS. They were just relentless with Freedom of Information Act lawsuits.
And through that legal grind, they actually managed to force something out.
They did. They forced the disclosure of a completely separate, deeply classified program. Its name was Project Aquarius.
A sensitive, compartmentalized program.
Yeah.
What does that terminology tell us about what was really going on?
It tells you everything. It means that while Blue Book was telling the public the topic was trivial and the book was closed, there was a parallel architecture. A hidden one.
Operating with the highest security clearances.
Exactly. Hidden not just from you and me, but often from most of Congress. And it was dedicated to analyzing this phenomenon. It proved the core conspiracy claim was true. The government was keeping 2 sets of books.
Project Aquarius was the proof of that hidden state.
It was. But the real public shift, the moment the conversation really came out of the fringe and back into the halls of power, that was much more recent. That was 2017.
The New York Times.
The New York Times bombshell. Those articles, glowing auras and black money, they were monumental because this wasn't anonymous sources or UFO journals anymore.
No, this was on-the-record government official.
On the record. And they confirmed the existence of ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, an official, previously secret Pentagon program.
And it had a real budget, $22 million initially, run by an intelligence officer, Luis Elizondo.
Let's just pause on that number. $22 million. It's not a huge amount in Pentagon terms, but it's not nothing. It's not a clerical error.
No, it tells you that real institutional resources, financial, operational resources, were being dedicated to this for at least 5 years, while the public story was still, we don't study this anymore.
That budget was used to contract out analysis to aerospace firms, to collect sensor data, to debrief witnesses. The investment confirms that high-level people, including the Senate Majority Leader at the time, Harry Reid, believed this was a genuine operational problem that needed serious black budget money.
And the most brilliant strategic move, the thing that allowed policymakers to finally engage without fear of being laughed out of the room, was the framing. The issue got professionally laundered.
That's the perfect way to put it. The focus just immediately pivoted away from the old question of, are aliens here, to a new one.
This is a matter of national security and aerospace safety.
Exactly. Suddenly it's about threat assessment. It's about incursions into controlled military airspace by unknown craft with superior capabilities. When you frame it like that, senators and intelligence directors can talk about it seriously.
And that shift really kicked off what we can call the age of disclosure. We see all these legislative and institutional changes that basically give the military permission to finally talk about this once taboo subject.
It started with the UAP task force in 2020. That was the first big step. It normalized the conversation and, crucially, it provided a secure channel for pilots to report things without fear of ridicule.
Then it got even more official.
Much more. It was quickly institutionalized, growing into the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or ARO, the very existence of ARO, which is now overseen by the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks.
The number 2 person at the Pentagon.
Right. It confirms that UAP investigation is now a permanent, embedded function within the DoD. It's not a special project anymore, it's just part of the structure.
And then Congress really got involved, flexing its constitutional muscle. We had that public hearing in 2022, the first in over 50 years. And then the big one, the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA.
The 2023 NDAA was a sea change. It wasn't just, a suggestion to report things. It mandated critical structural changes. It required ARO to set up a secure, protected mechanism for reporting.
And for the ultimate disclosure of non-Earth origin or non-human technology, if it's ever found to be in government hands.
Just think about that for a second. That is a staggering legal premise. The United States Congress is now officially legislating for the possibility of recovering non-human technology.
And it also included powerful whistleblower protections.
Very powerful. It grants legal immunity to people who come forward with information about secret UAP programs, even if those programs were illegal or unacknowledged. It was Congress basically saying, we think these secret programs might exist and we need to bring them into the light.
That kind of bipartisan legislative push for transparency is really what brings us to the modern whistleblower era, personified by David Grush.
Grush's testimony in 2023 under oath before Congress was a huge cultural catalyst. He alleged these long-running secret government crash retrieval programs and even the possession of non-human biologics.
Now, his claims are still just claims. They're unsubstantiated by public evidence.
That's right. But his credibility, and the reason he was taken so seriously, came from his background as a decorated intelligence official and the fact that he used the proper legal channels. He went through the intelligence community, Inspector General.
So whether or not you believe the claims, the fact that a person with his credentials went through the official process to make such extraordinary claims under oath, it forced the conversation. It moved it from the philosophical realm right into the political pressure cooker of mandatory disclosure.
It did. It tied the whole idea of disclosure directly to claims of recovered hardware and bodies, and it set the stage for these intense legislative battles we're seeing now.
Okay, we've traced the history of the secrecy and the recent pivot to transparency. Now let's anchor this whole discussion in the actual physical evidence, the events that forced the Pentagon's hand in the first place.
And when you talk about undeniable multi-sensor evidence, the conversation always starts in one place. The Nimitz Tic Tac incident in 2004.
Why is the Nimitz encounter considered the gold standard?
Because of the sheer weight of the evidence, you have multiple highly credible professional witnesses, Navy fighter pilots like Commander David Fravor. You have advanced radar data from the USS Princeton's Aegis combat system.
One of the most advanced sensor systems on the planet.
Right. And you have confirmation from multiple other sensor packages. This wasn't a fuzzy photo taken by a civilian in their backyard. This was hard data collected under high-stakes military conditions.
Let's get into the specifics of the object itself, the Tic Tac. What made its performance so anomalous? It wasn't just that it was fast.
No, it's that it defies our fundamental understanding of aerodynamics and propulsion. The pilots in the source documents describe a 40-foot, smooth, white, wingless object. No exhaust plume, no visible control surfaces.
And the movement.
The movement is the impossible part. It demonstrated instantaneous acceleration and velocity changes that would create G-forces that would literally tear any conventional aircraft and its pilot into pieces. We're talking thousands of Gs.
It was observed dropping from 80,000 feet down to just above the ocean surface in seconds.
And then accelerating away at speeds that are they're off the charts of known physics.
And crucially, the Nimitz case is what really introduced the public to the idea of transmedium capability.
Yes. Radar operators tracked the object moving seamlessly between the air and the water. Think about what that requires. An understanding of fluid dynamics and a propulsion system that is vastly superior to anything we have, publicly or classified.
If you won't have wings, and you don't have a heat signature, and you can move in air, space, and water,
you are operating completely outside the known framework of human engineering. Full stop.
And the public has actually seen some of this data. The Navy confirmed it's real.
Right, we have the declassified videos, Phil-IR, gimbal, and go fast. And yeah, they can look ambiguous to an untrained eye, but they aren't just videos. They are objective, sensor-based data gathered by the world's most advanced military hardware, confirming that these objects were there.
Moving beyond the U.S. for a moment, this is obviously a global phenomenon. The Belgian wave from 1989 to 1990 is a major international case that proves this isn't just some secret American tech.
The Belgian wave was incredible. It was prolonged, it was systematic, and it was witnessed by thousands of people all across the country.
And the reports were consistent.
Very consistent. A large, silent, triangular craft with these powerful spotlights. And again, this wasn't just people looking up at the sky. These sightings were corroborated by NATO radar. They scrambled F-16 jets to try and intercept it.
And what was the Belgian Air Force's official conclusion after all that?
They investigated thoroughly, and their official report ruled out all conventional aircraft, weather phenomena, or drones. The craft showed high speed, silent maneuverability, and made turns that were impossible for any known aircraft. They officially classified it as unexplained, which lent this huge institutional weight to the reality of the phenomenon.
Now let's turn to a case that's less famous, but in some ways even more chilling from a military perspective. The Tehran incident of 1976.
The Tehran incident is a must-read for anyone interested in the threat assessment angle. It's meticulously documented, not just by the Iranian Air Force, but it was logged by the CIA and the DIA here in the US.
It involved Iranian jets being sent up to intercept a large, luminous object over their capital city.
Yes, and what happened next is what makes it so important. The pilots reported that as they got close to the object, their instruments, specifically their weapons control panels and their radar, were completely disabled. Just went dead.
Just by being near this thing.
In one case, a pilot tried to fire an air-to-air missile, and the launch system failed on the spot. As soon as he turned his jet away from the object, the systems came back online.
That suggests some kind of directed energy or a sophisticated electronic warfare capability.
It moves the UAP discussion squarely into the realm of active, potentially hostile interference.
So if you put them together, Nimitz gives us the impossible physics. The Belgian wave gives us the widespread long-term radar tracking, and Tehran gives us the operational weapons disabling effect. These are the concrete data points that made it impossible for the Pentagon to just keep saying it's all swamp gas.
Exactly. The data became too good to ignore.
So once we step away from the hard data, the radar returns, the gun camera footage, we get into the even deeper waters of human psychology. The UAP narrative really is a kind of Rorschach test for our society, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And the core psychological tension that you see in all our sources is a classic case of what psychologists call cognitive dissonance.
Which is the stress you feel when you're trying to hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time.
Exactly. On one hand, you have the official government narrative for decades, which was, this is trivial, it's imaginary, it's not real. And on the other hand, you have credible, powerful testimony from people like naval commanders backed up by sensor data.
And that huge disconnect.
Yeah.
The government saying nothing's happening while pilots are screaming, I'm seeing possible physics. That creates the belief vacuum that all the speculation just rushes in to fill.
Precisely. And this whole phenomenon directly plugs into that long-term societal mistrust of government, a mistrust that was, forged back at Roswell and then reinforced for decades.
It leads to what some sociologists call ontological fracturing. A significant part of the population just assumes there's a cover-up, no matter what evidence is released.
Which brings us to a more philosophical idea, one that's beautifully laid out by the sociologist Diana Pasulka, the technological sublime.
Explain that.
Pasulka's theory is that in our modern world, which is so secular, so scientifically explained, advanced UAPs have started to fill the role that angels, miracles, or visitations from gods used to fill.
So when science has sort of demystified the cosmos, the UAP serves as this new bridge, a link between what we know and the great unknown.
It's a tangible yet completely inexplicable connection between human limitation and cosmic mystery. It taps into that deep, innate human need for transcendence that traditional religions once satisfied for many people.
Speaking of existential shifts, if we ever got definitive confirmation of non-human technology, it would trigger something our sources talk about a lot: ontological shock.
Ontological shock is the psychological state where your fundamental sense of reality, the very nature of what you thought was real, is just shattered. And we have to think about the specific impacts because it's not just about being scared.
No.
If confirmation of non-human intelligence, or NHI, were sudden, it would destabilize everything. Think about the global insurance industry. How do you underwrite risk when your entire concept of what is physically possible is suddenly rendered obsolete?
Or international law. The whole system is based on human sovereignty.
Exactly. International law, the role of the UN, the global balance of military power, it's all predicated on human beings being the only game in town. Confirmation of an external, non-human presence would throw all of that into total chaos. It would force humanity, for the first time, to see itself as a single entity on a planetary scale. That's the real risk of a rapid, unprepared disclosure.
And the fear of causing that kind of shock, or even just of being seen as crazy, is what kept this conversation buried for so long. The stigma cycle.
The stigma cycle was incredibly powerful and insidious. The fear of professional ridicule, of being grounded, of maybe even getting a psychiatric referral. It actively suppressed reporting from the most credible witnesses.
The pilots, the air traffic controllers, the senior military officers.
The very people with the best data.
Yeah.
And because they didn't report, it limited the amount of high-quality data available, which then just reinforced the public idea that the topic was fringe. It was a vicious circle.
Which is why the creation of AARO and the whistleblower protections in the NDAA were so incredibly important.
Yes. They finally granted explicit institutional permission for credible people to talk about this stuff inside a secure system without fear of losing their careers. They broke the stigma cycle by making reporting a duty instead of a risk.
We can't talk about the psychology of this without addressing the most culturally famous part of it all: the abduction phenomena. It really hit the mainstream with the Betty and Barney Hill case back in 1961.
The Hill case is the template. It set the pattern for almost every abduction narrative that followed, often involving these detailed, quasi-medical accounts that were recovered under hypnosis.
And while pop culture just grabs onto the idea of little green men taking people, serious researchers like the Harvard psychiatrist John Mack took a much more nuanced approach.
Mack did something really important. He separated the phenomenological experience from the literal physical event.
What does that mean exactly?
It means Mack's research accepted that the experience was profoundly real, often traumatic, and deeply meaningful to the person who experienced it, even if he couldn't verify it as a literal kidnapping. He explored these stories as powerful, modern myths, as a form of conscious misencounter, maybe.
So the key is to analyze the profound reality of the experience itself, rather than just dismissing the person as crazy.
That's the only way to approach it seriously.
Okay, so we've covered the data, we've covered the psychology. Now we have to wade into the marketplace of competing explanations. And the first hurdle every single time is the automatic dismissal. the misinterpretation myth.
The idea that UAPs are always just drones or balloons or weird atmospheric effects.
And this is where the distinction between a sighting and a case is so important.
It's crucial. The misinterpretation myth is probably correct for the vast majority of civilian sightings. Blurry photos, misidentified planets, known aircraft. It explains a lot.
But it completely falls apart when you try to apply it to the gold standard cases. You can't just explain away the Nimitz physics or the Tehran radar jamming with, it was probably a weather balloon.
You can't. The myth fails completely against multi-sensor confirmation, trained pilot observation, and advanced military radar. When you have instrumented tracking of an object doing things that are impossible for our own technology, you've moved past simple misidentification. You are in the realm of a genuine physical anomaly.
Which leads us to the most compelling non-extraterrestrial explanation, the secret human tech theory.
This is the idea that what we're seeing isn't from another planet, but from a hidden, deeply classified program right here on Earth.
And this theory has a lot of weight inside the intelligence community because honestly, its implications are maybe even more frightening politically than aliens.
Oh, absolutely. If it's true, it means there is a breakaway civilization, a hidden group, probably in the deep defense or corporate world, that possesses physics-breaking technology and has zero congressional oversight.
A state within a state, operating with technology and money that are completely off the books.
Exactly. The constitutional danger there is just immense. It means an unelected, unacknowledged group controls the most powerful technology on the planet, funded by black budgets, totally outside the democratic process.
And our sources show that the government has at least planned for the infrastructure to handle this kind of technology.
Yes, we know about the Kona Blue E program. It was a proposal at the Department of Homeland Security designed specifically to track and, quote, exploit UAP technology for defense purposes.
So the fact that they were designing protocols for how to retrieve and reverse engineer this stuff shows that they believe recovery was a real possibility.
It shows the internal belief was there. Now, let's try to synthesize the origin debate into the three main hypotheses that are really driving the research today. First, the classic one, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, or ETH.
This is the idea that UAPs are from non-human intelligence, or maybe they're advanced robotic probes, von Neumann probes.
Right. And the main scientific champion of this view today is the Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb. But he's not just speculating.
No, he's actually trying to collect data.
His whole approach is defined by the Galileo project. His team is putting instrumented sensor platforms all over the world, telescopes, infrared cameras, acoustic sensors, to gather repeatable, verifiable scientific data. He wants to move the conversation from anecdote to hard science.
Okay, the second big hypothesis shifts the question from where to how. The ultra-terrestrial or interdimensional hypothesis. This is Jacques Vallée's territory.
Vallée's work is fascinating. He argues that this phenomenon has been with us all through history. It just changes its appearance to fit our cultural expectations.
So in the past, it was ferries or airships, and now it's advanced spacecraft.
That's the idea. He suggests the origin might not be another star system, but maybe another dimension or an adjacent reality. That they are ultra-terrestrial.
Which avoids the whole paradox of why would they travel light years just to crash in New Mexico?
Exactly. It makes them almost indigenous to our reality, just operating outside our normal bandwidth of perception. Vallée sees the phenomenon more as a kind of control system, something interacting with human consciousness.
And then finally, you have the necessary, rigorous, prosaic, or skeptical view, championed by people like Nick West.
And that skeptical view is essential. Critics like West argue that, yeah, a tiny fraction of cases might be physically anomalous, but the vast majority can and should be explained by normal things if you just look closely enough.
Optical illusions, camera glitches, classified drones.
Right. And his central point is a fair one. Until we have a piece of tangible, verifiable physical evidence in our hands, we should always prioritize the most rational, least exotic explanation.
It's also really important to see how the interpretation of all this changes dramatically depending on where you are in the world.
The cultural lens is everything. In the USA, because of Roswell and the Cold War, the story is almost entirely framed through government secrecy and military threat. The question is always, what is the government hiding from us?
Whereas in a place like Latin America, the response can be totally different, almost like a public health issue.
Look at Brazil in 1977, the choleras incident. The belief there is often tied up with spiritual consciousness, but also physical danger. When people started reporting injuries from these luminous objects, the Brazilian Air Force launched Operation Saucer.
Not just to investigate, but to provide medical aid and security.
The state treated it like a genuine public health crisis, not just a military secret.
And then you have Europe, especially France, which takes this much more open scientific approach.
France is the total opposite of U.S. secrecy. They set up an official, transparent civilian research group called GAIPAN decades ago. They publish everything online. Their focus is much more sociological and historical. It's the government engaging through science, not secrecy.
And finally, what about countries like Russia and China?
For them, it is a hard military secret. Russia's history blends UAP observation with paranormal research, always looking for a potential weapon. China views it almost purely through a technological lens. It's a race to reverse engineer something that could give them a massive military advantage.
So a UAP can be a threat, a god, a medical problem, or a piece of tech, all depending on your culture.
Exactly.
Okay, let's pivot to the final analysis. What does this all mean for national security and for us as a species? Our sources keep pointing to one very specific, very recurring connection: UAPs and our nuclear capabilities.
This is one of the most compelling and frankly chilling patterns in the entire 75-year history. There is a deep recurring link suggesting that this phenomenon, whatever it is, takes a very specific interest in our atomic weapons.
And it's not just watching.
No, sometimes it's direct interaction. We have documented reports going back to the 60s of UAPs sighted over our nuclear missile silos, often at the exact same time as inexplicable system malfunctions.
The most famous case is the 1967 incident at Malmstrom Air Force Base.
At Malmstrom, multiple nuclear missiles, we're talking ICBMs, were suddenly and inexplicably disabled. They went offline at the same time that UAPs were reported hovering over the silos.
That is a staggering operational detail. Your most powerful weapons going down in the presence of an unknown object.
It suggests either an advanced monitoring capability or, and this is the scary part, an active intervention capability that can disrupt our most secure military technology. And a 2025 study in our sources even links unexplained lights, star-like transients, to historical nuclear test sites all over the world going back to the 50s.
It seems like they are definitely tracking our nuclear progress.
That seems undeniable.
But despite all the controversies and the fears, the simple act of this inquiry has some clear potential benefits for us, right?
Absolutely. First, just pursuing anomalies has always led to scientific advancement. It's how science works. Second, the political pressure from the disclosure movement is strengthening government accountability. It's forcing a necessary conversation about black budgets and secret programs.
And then there's the biggest potential benefit of all.
The potential shift in perspective. If a genuine external presence were ever confirmed, it could be the one thing that finally forces humanity to adopt a planetary identity, to move past our tribal divisions.
On the flip side of that coin, the risks in this disclosure process are just as big. The topic is a perfect vehicle for manipulation.
It's an information warfare dream scenario. The public's appetite for UAP news makes it incredibly vulnerable to state-sponsored UFO mythology. An adversary could easily use it to mask their own secret projects, or to convince us they have reverse-engineered technology that they don't actually possess.
There's also the risk of a major societal backlash if what the government eventually discloses doesn't live up to the hype.
That is the crisis of legitimacy. If the disclosure movement promises alien bodies and all the government can deliver is more grainy sensor footage of weird moving dots, you could have a profound public disappointment, a real collapse of trust in both science and government.
So the real fear isn't necessarily that the universe is strange, but how our society handles that strangeness.
Exactly. The ultimate danger here isn't aliens. It's the twin traps of belief without evidence on one side and denial without genuine inquiry on the other. This whole story is less about what's out there and more about how power manages uncertainty and how we all react when our leaders are finally forced to admit we don't know.
A profound and difficult place to be.
Indeed.
So we've tracked this phenomenon from the glowing Foo Fighters of World War II all the way to the instrumented analysis of the Nimitz incident and the stringent legislative demands of the 2023 NDAA. It's a 75-year story where impossible physics meets deep political secrecy.
And the central theme is just so clear. The UAT narrative is the primary battlefield for our relationship with secrecy, with authority, and with the fundamental limits of what we know.
The truth of the Pentagon secrets seems to be less about alien bodies in a hangar and more about the limits of public knowledge in a massive national security state. And for decades, that state chose total secrecy over transparency, which arguably created the very mistrust it was trying to prevent.
The phenomenon holds up a mirror to us, and in that reflection, we see our own technological anxieties, our deep need for some kind of cosmic context, and our absolute terror of being cosmically insignificant.
The focus is clearly, finally, moving toward evidence-based instrumented study, through ARO, through the Galileo Project, through Congress. The final revelation might not be a crashed saucer, but maybe a more profound understanding of reality itself, or at least a more honest understanding of what our own institutions have been willing to tell us.
So we leave you, the learner, with the question that really sits at the edge of this new frontier. If tomorrow the definitive answer came, yes, it's external, or no, it's a secret human program, would humanity feel relieved to finally have the answer? Or would we feel maybe a little bit lost without this great shared mystery? The search for UAPs forces us all to confront the limits of our knowledge and the certainty we once took for granted.